all, welcome. As I said, we are recording this, so it'll be posted later if anyone likes it and wants to share it with anybody. But the topic for tonight's class is what exactly is the Messiah anyways? So by the way, I want to make sure we get all questions answered. So if you do have a question right now, because everyone is muted, if you do have a question, please raise your hand. If you know how to raise your hand and Zoom here, you basically click on click on the screen there, and there's an option to raise your hand, and then we can call on you for a question. Or I can unmute you for a question, or if you want to just put in the chat box there, hopefully I'll see the questions as they go into the chat box. So our topic for tonight is what exactly is the Messiah anyways? Now, first of all, let me clarify why exactly I made this the topic for tonight. We are in the waning days now of the month of Nisan. The month of Nisan, and the time of Nisan is referred to as Zman Cherusenu, the time of our freedom. And our sages teach us that it's really that we commonly think, when we hear this, we would think that this is called the time of our freedom because this is the month that Passover happened in. And if this is the month that Passover happened in, then it makes sense that this is the time of our freedom. But Rav Dessler explains it's really the complete opposite, that the reason that Passover happened in this time of year is because this is the time of freedom. In other words, when the Almighty created the world, he puts into play this time of year a flow of cherus is the Hebrew word, a flow of freedom. And therefore, when it was time for the Jews to leave Egypt, of course it happened during this time period because it's the time of freedom. So, question of which one's the cart and which one's the horse, whichever goes first, what's the seed and what's the apple, what's the egg and what's the chicken. The first thing is that this is the time of freedom. And that's why Passover happened during this time. And along those lines, our sages tell us that just like the original redemption, meaning the exodus from Egypt, the redemption of the Jewish people that began our nationhood, happened during the month of Nisan, so too, and the future redemption will also happen during the month of Nisan. So the question is, what's the future redemption? Well, that's the whole concept of Messiah. That is, so to speak, quote unquote, the future redemption that we are talking about over there. So, which really just leaves a whole slew of questions. Redemption from what? What do we need redemption for? What's the Messiah going to do to redeem us? What does Messiah mean? Who is the Messiah? What is all these things? So I figured it was an opportune time, seeing as we are in the last, 2 days here of the month of Nisan, an opportune time to figure out what even is the concept of Messiah, and what is it that our sages tell us clearly is going to happen down the road in the future. So let's start with just defining terminology. To start with, the word Messiah is just the Anglo-Latin word of the Hebrew word Mashiach, and you may or may not be familiar with that word, but Mashiach means quite simply the anointed one. Right? That's what the word means. In fact, if we look in the Torah, in the original 5 books, not in the whole Tanakh, but in the original 5 books of the Torah and the Tanakh, in the Torah, the word Mashiach appears, I believe, 5 times or 4 times. And it appears 4 times, and none of them are in reference to what we colloquially call the Messiah. They're all in reference to the Kohen Gadol, to the high priest. Okay? So if we were just being Chumash specific or Torah specific or 5 books of Moses specific, the word Mashiach or Messiah sounds like it means the high priest of the Jewish people. But when we jump into as early as the book of Samuel, which is already the 3rd book of the prophets, the first book was Joshua, then the book of Judges, and then the book of Samuel, there's another reference to Mashiach. And that is when the first king is appointed over the Jewish people, who is King Saul. He is referred to as the Mashiach. So we have 2 references for Mashiach. We have the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, and we have the king of Israel. The question is, what do the 2 have in common? They both get the name Mashiach. Well, quite simply, it's practically that the way that a king would start off his reign as the king of Israel was the same exact way that the high priest would start off his tenure or his service as the high priest in the temple. And that is that there was a special oil, a special type of olive oil that was poured onto his head in an anointing ceremony. The word Mashiach in Hebrew means to anoint, the anointed one. And in Jewish tradition, there are two figures that get anointed, the high priest and the king. Those are the anointed ones. So we're not here to focus on the high priest because that's, even though he's also the Mashiach, that's not the famous one or the one that we're all really concerned about. But be it as it may, is when the temple existed for the 410 years of the first temple, the 420 years of the second temple, and for the 400 years of the tabernacle before that, so a total of 1,200 years, there was a high priest, and he was anointed when he took on that position. So that's why he's the Mashiach. But the king's also anointed. So just a simple translation of the term Messiah, or in Hebrew Mashiach, it means the anointed one, the one who is anointed as king of Israel. So once we have that definition, well, there's been basically throughout Jewish history a whole slew of messiahs, right? If you've ever studied through the early prophets, there was Saul, there was David, there was Solomon, there was Rechavam, there was going on down in the kingdom splits. You have the kingdom of Judah, the kingdom of Israel, and also the kings of Israel were anointed, Yerovam ben Nevat and Achav and all those guys. You had something like 40 or 50 different kings between the two kingdoms, and all of them were anointed. So they were all Mashiachs. So quite simply, Mashiach is the anointed one, and more specifically, the colloquial term of Messiah is talking about just that. Just at its simple, simplistic, and this will be our starting level, it's talking about the King of Israel, right? If you know anything about Christian sources where they claim to have identified the Messiah, quite often they'll refer to their Messiah as the King of Israel. And that's because that's what it is. At its simple core, it is the King of Israel, which, again, we'll get to. It begs the question, like, to the best of my knowledge, their Messiah was never the king over Israel, so how in the world do they call him Messiah? Oh, that's the second comment. Okay, maybe we'll get to that, maybe we won't. But at its core, the concept of Mashiach, the concept of Messiah, means a reinstitution of the house of David over the Jewish people. By the way, just in case you were concerned, it was nowhere in the agreement signed by Netanyahu and Gantz that Netanyahu would have oil poured over his head when he retakes the premiership of the modern-day state of Israel. Just in case you thought that he thinks he's king, they refer to him as King Bibi. He's never been anointed, never will be anointed. I don't, that's probably not that's not what's going on over there. But quite simply, at least at its core, that's what we're talking about when we talk about the subject matter of Mashiach. So what I wanted to do is give really just a textbook definition for us to go from in our discussion. And there's really, for the most part, only one textbook definition, so to speak, as to what the Messiah is beyond what I just told you. And that is the Rambam. That is Maimonides. Maimonides was a 12th century rabbi, one of the greatest Jewish philosophers of all time, a great doctor as well. And he wrote a number of philosophical works. Beyond his philosophical works, he also wrote his magnum opus called the Mishnah Torah. The Mishnah Torah is a 14-volume encyclopedic work that was meant to have the whole corpus of Judaism in it, both law and philosophy. So in his work, Mishnah Torah, and it's the 12th book out of the 14 books, there's a book called Shoftim, which is the book of judges or governments, really. And right at the end, he tells us what to look for and how to identify, so to speak. And when we're talking about Mashiach, when we're talking about the Messiah, what exactly we're talking about. And I think it's very important for us to have an understanding of this, because this is the crux of what it is. So I wanted to go through the Rambam's word himself to be able to clarify. First of all, at this point, any questions so far? Any hands up? I don't see anything in the chat yet, so it must be either I've already lost everybody, or at this point it's everyone's good for the starting level of the discussion, and we can now move on from here. So Okay, don't see any hands up, so let's keep going. Awesome. So just so you know where I'm quoting from, this is the Rambam in the book of Shoftim from the Mishnah Torah. It's called the section of Malachim u'Melchamos, of Kings and Wars, and it's the beginning of chapter 11. So, and he spells it out as plain as day in 2 pages as to what the whole concept of Messiah is. So he says, HaMelech HaMashiach asid la'amod ulehachser malchus beis David l'shina hamshala harishona, that just the first sentence, the first thing that the Messiah is, first of all, he doesn't just call him the Messiah, he calls him Melech HaMashiach. So he clarifies for us, because as we said, in Jewish tradition, there's 2 Messiahs, at least 2 Messiahs, right? There's the king and there's the high priest. So he says, King Messiah. So he knows we're not talking about Kohen Mashiach, we're not talking about the priest Messiah, we're talking about the King Messiah, right? That's what we're focusing on. So the King Messiah in the future will arise over the Jewish people, and he will rebuild the kingship of David just like it was originally, and he will bone it, right? That's the first thing he has to do. So basically, the very first step he has to do is he has to restart the Davidic line, restart the Davidic rulership over the nation of Israel, over the Jewish people. That's step number 1. The second thing is Ubona Mikdash, that he has to rebuild the temple. That's number 2. And number 3 is V'kabetz Nidchei Yisrael. He has to bring in the exiles of the Jewish people. Okay? So Maimonides off the bat gives us 3 qualifications of what we need to look for in Mashiach. First of all, king. He's got to restart the Davidic line. In other words, he's got to restart a monarchy for the Jewish people. He has to rebuild the temple. And he has to bring in all of the exiles of the Jewish people. Now, who are the exiles of the Jewish people? That's us, right? Right now, you have, as I mentioned a million times, if I mentioned it once, we're all living in absolutely miraculous times, and that we can all say that our eyes witnessed for the first time in 2,500 years, the majority of the world Jewish population is living in Israel. In other words, not since the destruction of the first temple was the majority of the Jewish population of the world living in Israel. During the whole Second Temple time period, the majority of the Jews were still in Babylon. They did not come back to Israel. So nowadays, it just the curve just, we got over the curve, so to speak, and the majority of the Jews of the world are now living in Israel, and those of us in the exile are now the minority. So one thing or the third thing that we're saying now the Messiah is going to have to do is to bring back those of us who aren't there yet. So half of us are there already, but those of us it's not going to be half pretty soon, but those of us who are not there, Messiah has to make sure to bring back to Israel as well. Just to speak to that for a minute, it's a very important concept, just general Jewish concept, is to understand, I guess, the definition of a Jew. I'm not getting into the whole who's a Jew question. I'm just getting the definition of what's a Jew before without talking about who's a Jew. We're not a religion. That's not what a Jew is. Judaism is the national religion of the Jewish people. We are a nation. If you're familiar with the term Am Yisrael, right? The famous Shlomo Carlebach song, Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives. We are a nation, and we are a nation in exile, right? Even those living in Israel are in exile, because until these things happen, it's still considered a nation in exile. So we are very much a nation. So if anyone asks you, what's a Jew is an ethnic group, maybe, is a national group, a nationality. Those are all right. And then our state religion is Judaism. So it's important to clarify that. So one of the main things that Mashiach is going to do is restart that, and with all its glory, so to speak, that we won't only be a people, we won't only be a religion, but we'll be a people with a religion and a state and a temple and a king. And that's what those are all the check marks, so to speak, that we need from the Messiah, from the Mashiach. And I'll bring back all the laws like that were there originally. So if you're wondering, I don't know if anyone's wondering, but if you're paying attention to the weekly Torah readings, which we're obviously not hearing in synagogue nowadays, we're smack in the middle of the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, which talks all about the laws of the temple and the sacrificial laws. And that's part of what the Rambam is referring to, that all that's going to come back. Okay, maybe a discussion for another time. I don't want to get too sidetracked into that, into what that means and how we understand it. But that's what Maimonides is talking about over here. Markrivim korbanos also shmatim v'yavolos. The sacrificial service will restart in the temple, and the system of the Shemitah year and the Jubilee year will come back. Kol mitzvos amur Torah. Everything mentioned in the Torah that we can't do now because we're in exile, that will all be done when Mashiach comes. Okay, so that's the introduction. Here's now the Maimonides goes on a bit of an aside and says v'kol misha eno mamin bo misha eno mechaka leviaso. Anybody who doesn't believe this, or anybody who doesn't anticipate this happening, lo b'shar navim bilvad hu kaifer. It's not just that person is denying the words of the prophets, but the words of Moshe himself. So just to clarify what Maimonides is saying here, a lot of people think that there's only biblical references to the concept of Messiah in the prophets, but as Maimonides gives a number of examples to here, there's definitely about 4 or 5 or 6 mentionings of the concept of Messiah right in the 5 books of Moses. So Maimonides is saying that it's a basic Jewish belief, not just a prophetic Jewish belief from the books of the prophets, but even from the Torah itself, from the Torah of Moshe itself, that this concept of the Davidic monarchy lapsing and then coming back at some point in the future, that is a fundamental Jewish belief. Now, the Rambam the Rambam not only says this here, but he says this in a number of places, and he actually lists it as what's called the 13 principles of Jewish faith. Rambam defines Jewish belief in 13 principles, and principle number 12 is exactly what he just said, that the belief that the Davidic monarchy will be reinstituted at some point in the future. That's 12 out of 13 of Maimonides' beliefs. For those of you who follow popular Israeli music, I know when I was a kid, there was a very popular Israeli song called Mashiach that went, Ani Ma'amin, very fast-paced Israeli song. They're singing all over Israel, and it was actually quoting a poetic summary of Maimonides' principles of belief. Saying that we believe that the Messiah is going to come, and we anticipate his coming every single day. It's one of the 13 core beliefs of Judaism, and that's what Maimonides really speaks out here and brings all the proofs as it comes. It's in the Torah, it's in the prophets, and it is very much part of the basis of Jewish belief that all this is going to happen. Okay, that's sort of the Maimonides introduction. Questions at this point? Okay, got an easy crowd here tonight. Either I'm boring you guys, or it's just you already know this stuff, or whatever it is. But this is the starting point. Now is where the Rambam gets kind of juicy. So if you made it this far, you stayed for the good stuff, because now is where it gets controversial. So much so that I have a very special edition of the Rambam here. This is what's called the Frankel Rambam. One of the things that Jews had to contend with for generations was that for many, many years, probably the first 100 years of the printing press, the church had full control of the printing press. Now, what that meant was that all of the Jewish books that were printed were essentially censored by the church, and the church at some point would add things in, and at other points would take things out. So the Talmud as a whole has, I think, less than 10 mentionings of Jesus, or possible mentionings of Jesus whatsoever, less than 10. But the church took those out. The church took them all out and did not give that to the original printers of the printing press. And only now and new editions have we put those mentionings back in. Along those lines, there is the belief that many of the mentionings of Jesus and the Talmud are actually hidden. There's a famous belief, not so famous belief, but a belief that every time the Talmud mentions Bilam, it's really that was covering up Jesus. That the Talmud really want to talk about Jesus, but they used Bilam instead. Bilam was the evil prophet from Parshas Balak. But okay, again, maybe a discussion for another time. But what I'm about to read you, or part of what I'm about to read you from the Rambam, was actually censored for many, many generations and only put back in now in modern times when we have Jewish printing press and full Jewish control of our own books. So hang on to your seats now for the juicy stuff. So Al yalel daitecha, it should not enter your mind. Shemelech HaMashiach sarich lasos osos umovsim. Don't think that anything's going to be supernatural about Messiah, right? Messiah is not going to do anything supernatural because everything we said so far is natural. He's a king. He's a political leader. He's he's going to do some pretty miraculous things. Let's face it. I mean, talking about being able to rebuild the temple. By the way, the location for the temple is the Temple Mount. That's where it's got to be. It can't be in Uganda, right? It can't be on Ben Gurion Street. It's got to be on the Temple Mount. And it just so happens that there's this other building there used by another religion on a regular basis. So you might say it's going to take miracles to be able to get to the point where you can put a temple in that spot. But be it as it may, it's all natural things. And the Rambam says straight out that it shouldn't enter your mind for a moment that Messiah is going to do supernatural things. He's not going to make anything new in the world. He's not going to resurrect the dead. You kind of see where the Rambam's hinting towards here. If you're familiar at all with the Christian Bible, a lot of these things are what the Christian Bible says Jesus did. The Christian Messiah, that he says that he did all these miracles and he resurrected the dead, he walked on water. Rambam saying, no, Messiah is not going to do those things. He's not going to do any of that. So ain't a davar kain. That's not the case. Rabbi Kiva Chacham Gadol mechachmei Mishnah Haya. Because we know that Rabbi Akiva was one of the greatest rabbis from the time of the Mishnah. Hu Haya Nosa Kelev Shel ben Koziba Hamelech, and he was one of the supporters of somebody named Bar Kochba, or Bar Koziba, as he's often called by the rabbis. The historical note here is that Bar Kochba was about 60 years after the Romans destroyed the temple. There was a man by the name of Shimon Bar Kochba who led a rebellion against the Romans and tried to reconstitute Jewish sovereignty over Israel and tried to actually rebuild the temple. And he had so much support and so much success initially, as Maimonides is pointing out, is that the greatest of the rabbis thought that he was Mashiach. They thought that he was going to do it. They thought that he was going to actually get the Romans out of Israel, bring the Jews back from exile, rebuild the temple, and they believed that he was the one. He was the one who was going to do it. So Rabbi Akiva himself says on the potential of Bar Kochba, Hu haya omer olav shehu hamelech HaMashiach. He said he was Messiah. V'doma hu v'kol chachmei doro shehu hamelech HaMashiach. And all of the rabbis of that generation thought he was Mashiach. Ad shenereg b'avonos, until he was killed because of his transgressions. And here's a big, again, one of the censored lines that jumps up here. Kevan sheneharag noda she'enu Mashiach. Since he was killed, we know he wasn't Messiah. Right? Rambam's going to say it 2 or 3 times. He's going to say, if your potential Messiah dies, he's out of the running to be the Messiah. No question about it, right? There's no second comings, no dead Messiah clubs. No, that's not Jewish, says the Rambam, right? No Messiah coming from the dead. Rambam makes that very, 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 very clear. Okay, so he says it once. He's going to say a few more times. We'll come back to that point. But the point that the Rambam is focusing on now, he says, "V'lo shalu menu chachmei lo os lo mofes." You had Rebbe Akiva, you had all the rabbis of that generation. They really thought that Shimon Bar Kochba was going to be the Messiah, and not once did they ask him to do a miracle. They didn't ask him to walk on the water. They didn't ask him to resurrect the dead. They didn't ask for miracles. None of that. So the Rambam says clearly from here that there's no miracles. That Messiah is not going to do miracles, not going to do anything supernatural, and we don't have to ask him for miracles. Again, this is part of the censored section. That's a hat tip to the Christian Bible, which says that one of the ways that Jesus proved himself was by doing miracles. Not Jewish, says the Rambam. That's not a qualification for to be the Messiah. Okay, that's the main thing that we're going to come back to the dying thing again. He's going to mention that again. That once you die, you're out of the running. Okay. I saw that Chaim asked a question about Mashiach ben Yosef. We'll get to that, or hopefully we'll get to that. I'll clarify that point as well. Vikra devarim kacha hein shatorah zos ein choke u'mishpata mishtaim la'olam u'olam ve'ein movsin alev lo garin mahen v'lo kol mosim v'garin. He goes on to say that there's no supernatural, nothing's going to change, no signs and wonders. None of that is necessary to be the Messiah. We shouldn't be looking for that. And and he says, Hare ze bevadai rasha v'apikursis. This is evil and heresy, right? Again, we know who he's talking to. He's talking to the Christians. It's evil and heresy to think that the Messiah, to be the Messiah, has to perform miracles. And he just gave many lines to get that clear. So again, we got that point clear. Okay, that's the first juicy section. Now we're going to get get a little bit more politically not so correct here. I used to have a teacher in Israel who said, I'm not PC, I'm AC, because when you're absolutely correct, you don't got to be politically correct. So now we're going to get to the absolutely correct definition of the Messiah and have some more non-politically correct statements of the Rambam that were censored for many generations, and now we have back for us to learn together. V'im Yamad Melech Beis David. Now, Maimonides really goes in, he's going to beat the point home as to what we are looking for. It says, let's say you have a candidate arise. Again, who is a candidate? Because step one, Maimonides said this clearly, he says it clearly again here. Step one of being a candidate is a king from the house of David. Okay? In other words, if you don't have the kingship reinstituted, you don't qualify even as a candidate. That means you're leading the Jewish people, and you're a descendant of David, and you're leading the Jewish people in the way of David, and that's what Bar Kokhba was doing. That's what all the kings of Israel tried to do at some level, but basically since Bar Kokhba hadn't been done, right? And by the way, again, the Christian Messiah never did that. Never once, and never for 1 second was he the leader of the Jewish people. He did not have a big following within the Jewish people. So step one again is a king of the Jewish people. V'im Yamad Melech Beis David. If hypothetically, so if a candidate arises, step one, be a king from the house of David. Huga b'Torah, v'osei b'mitzvosav keDavid aviv. He has to be sincere and strong in his observance of the Torah and his following of the commandments of the Torah, just like David, his antecedent, his forefather. Like the written Torah and the oral Torah, he's got to be, in other words, he's got to be a frum yid, right? He's got to be a righteous Jew. That's what we're looking for. So number one, got to be a king. Number two, got to be a righteous Jew who follows the Torah, and just like David, right? David is the paradigm of what we're looking for here. The Yikov, okay, so we have, again, for counter qualifications, king, sincere in his observance of the Torah, V'yakov kol Yisrael leilech ba, and not only that, but encourages Jews to follow the Torah. That nowadays we have a situation where again, Jews vary in their observance of the Torah. But Messiah is not only a political leader, he's got to be a spiritual leader. Again, like David did. He's got to inspire the Jews. He's got to not only be the political leader, but he's got to inspire the Jews to follow the Torah. He's got to be specific in the specific points of being a Jew, and he's got to fight the wars of the Almighty. A lot of discussion about what that means, the wars of the Almighty. Again, we know David fought physical wars, and that's part of the understanding over here. They talk about physical wars, but also spiritual wars. He's fighting any spiritual challenges against the Almighty, so to speak. He's promoting the Almighty's Torah. He's promoting the Torah of the Jewish people. So he's got to be a king. He's got to be a physical leader, a political leader, and a spiritual leader, right? That's our Mashiach. So at that point, says the Rambam, Hari zeh b'cheskes shehu Mashiach. He's a candidate, the Rambam says. At that point, he's a candidate that he could be the Messiah. Imasa v'hitzliach, if he continues to act and he's successful, the netzach kol ha'umos she'sevivov, and he's able to conquer Israel, right, and the whole of Israel without any contest. Nowadays, while we have sovereignty in Israel, it's definitely contested, as we know, and contested by the UN, contested by J Street. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little too political here. But it's definitely contested. It's not exclusively ours. So he's got to throw off all contests, make it clear that Israel is the Jews. Ubona mitash bimakomo. He has to build the temple in its place. Again, as we said before, he's got to build the temple on Mount Moriah, on the Temple Mount. In order to do that, I'm sorry to our Muslim cousins. You're going to have to remove the Dome of the Rock, remove the Mosque of Omar, remove all that stuff. You got to get rid of it because you got to build the temple. Again, I said that you don't have to do anything miraculous, but that's how's that going to happen? We'll see. So he's gonna declare clear sovereignty over Israel. He's going to build the temple in its place. The Kabetz Nidchei Yisrael, he's going to bring the rest of us back. Those of us who are still in exile, he's going to bring us back to Israel. At that point, Hari Zeh Mashiach Bevadai. So to be a candidate, he's got to be a king, religious leader, and what was the third thing I said? And he's got to fight the wars of the Almighty. That's to be a candidate. The candidates that rise to success are those that conquer Israel beyond a shadow of a doubt. No UN questioning it. No PLO questioning it. No anyone questioning it. 100% belonging to the Jewish people. He's got to build the temple on the Temple Mount in its original place without anything else there. And he's got to bring the rest of us back to Israel. That's Mashiach, says the Rambam. Anyone, right? That's our definition. Now, here's some of those words that were censored. Again, I think this whole section was censored, but here's some of the stinging words. Im lo hitzliach ad ko, if he's not successful in doing every single one of these things, oh nahareg, or he's killed, or he dies before he's successful, which obviously if he dies, he's not successful, or even I think my mind implies that he does some of it, but then he dies before he does all of it, like Bar Kokhba would be someone who was like that. Here's some very telling words of Maimonides. B'yadua she'enu zeh shehaticha alav Torah. We know for a fact that this person is not the one that the Torah guaranteed us as the Messiah. V'harei hu kechol malchei beis David hashlemim v'aksherim shemeso. At that point, he's in good standing. He's just like all the other kings from the house of David, who were pure and who were kosher, but they died. Right? King David was great, but he died. King Solomon was great, but he died. King Chizkiyahu was great, but he died. Right? There are many great kings of the Asa was great, but he died. Yehoshaphat was great, but he died. If he dies, we know he ain't Mashiach. V'lo he'emidu. Now there's some of those juicy words. V'lo he'emidu HaKadosh Baruch Hu ella linsos bo rabim. The whole reason that the Almighty even brings us close to the concept of maybe, possibly this person could have been the Messiah like they did at the times of different kings at certain times, the only reason is to test the populace, to test the people. That is the whole reason why the Almighty even made us get close at these points in history. Okay, hold on to your Zoom accounts now. Af Yeshua HaNatzri. Anybody know who Yeshua HaNatzri is? Let's translate that into English. Yeshua HaNatzri is Jesus of Nazareth. Okay, Rambam now, until now he's been alluding to it. Now he grabs the bull by the horn. All right, he says, even Jesus of Nazareth, Shedame Sheyiya Mashiach, who presented himself as a messianic candidate. Again, he didn't really fulfill any of these things, but he presented himself as a messianic candidate. V'neharag b'bezdin, and then he was killed in court. Kivarnis nababo Daniel already prophesies about people, about really him. Maimonides is saying, "Ubnei pirtzei amcha yinasu lahamid chazon v'nikshala." The whole reason that you had Jesus in the world. Why was Jesus even here? Was to test the people, to see how sincere they were. Would we possibly follow after someone who maybe had some good characteristics, but didn't really fulfill all the qualifications, or would we not? The key yesh mikshal gadol mizeh, there's a tremendous stumbling block here. Shekol hanavim davru shamashiach go Yisrael, because the prophets made it clear that the Mashiach will be the one to redeem the Jewish people. And they bring us back to Israel, and he strengthened us in Torah. And talking back about Jesus, Gorm Abed Yisrael. He caused the destruction of the Jew, or not total destruction, but partial destruction of the Jewish people. Becherev ufazer shirosam. Now, you have to remember Maimonides' time period. Maimonides saw the Crusaders, right? He lived at the time of the Crusades. And he's saying that how in the world could Jesus even be a candidate? Because the Messiah is supposed to redeem the Jewish people, and look how much bloodshed came in the name of Jesus. Not to mention they don't follow the Torah, and he threw off the Torah, which is the next thing he says over here. And he got the majority of the world to not follow the Torah in its sincere way. So we know that there's no possible way under the sun that the Christian Messiah could fulfill the Jewish qualification of what it means to be the Messiah. Aval machshavas. Okay, here's now a interesting point. He says, "Aval machshavas bari olam ein kayach ba'adam lahasigam ki lo darkeno darkem." Right? He says. Now we can't really ask why the Almighty let such bloodshed happen. It's somebody who was a claimant to be the Messiah. But be it as it may, one thing we know is clear is that he was not the Messiah, and he died. And many. I don't think we had one checkbox properly checked here that he could have possibly been the Messiah. Now Maimonides gets very philosophical here, and he says, "V'kol ha'devarim ha'elu," everything that we've seen, and Maimonides said this 900 years ago, 800 years ago, but it's all the more so now, 800 years later. Everything we've seen, Shal Yeshu HaNatzri, with the descendants of the philosophies and the religion of Jesus of Nazareth, V'shel Zeh HaYishmaeli, and from that Ishmaelite, anyone know who that Ishmaelite is? That's Muhammad, right? Maimonides in many places has some very strong words to say about Islam, because you have to remember, he not only suffered Christian persecution at the hand of the Crusaders, but he suffered Muslim persecution as well. So here's a little bit nicer. He just refers to him as that Ishmaelite. And in a famous writing of Maimonides called the Igeres HaTeman, he calls him Ha'ish HaMeshuga, the crazy man. So yes, Rambam wrote with a strong pen quite often. But nonetheless, Maimonides says everything that we've experienced from Christianity and Islam, she'amod achiv einan ella l'shayr derech l'melech hamashiach l'sakem es ha'olam kol la'avad es Hashem b'yachad. There was a purpose for it. What was the purpose? It's meaning history as we've seen it play out over the past 2,000 years, with a third of the world becoming Christian and a third of the world becoming Muslim, and us, the little group of us Jews, where they don't even round off to as many as we are. The reason for it, says the Rambam, is l'saken es ha'olam, was to perfect the world, la'avod as l'saken ha'olam kulo la'avod es Hashem b'yachad, to serve one God. In other words, what Maimonides says the purpose was, we as Jews, I often point out that there's a number of intellectually dishonest statements that you'll often hear from rabbis. I'm just going to say, I'm going to throw my profession under the bus here a little bit. Rabbis often make intellectually dishonest statements. And a very famous intellectually dishonest statement that rabbis will often say is that Judaism is not a proselytizing religion. That's an intellectually dishonest statement. Now, there's a truth to it, because yes, we are not a proselytizing religion. We do not believe that everybody has to be Jewish, and we definitely do not believe people have to be forced to be Jewish, and definitely not forced by the sword, like, again, our Christian and Muslim brothers have shown throughout the generations. None of that is Jewish. So when we say we're not a proselytizing religion, definitely in that regard, we are not a proselytizing religion. But one thing that we do believe in firmly is that the whole world should be monotheistic. That is something we believe in. And that's, if you're familiar with the concept of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 Noahide laws, those are the commandments of the Torah that speak to the nations of the world. So so to speak, there's the Torah for the Jewish people, which is all 613 commandments. And then there's the 7 commandments for the nations of the world. So one of those commandments is being a monotheist. And we do believe that everyone should be at least a Noahide. So yes, we're not proselytizing that everyone should be Jewish, but in a certain sense, we should be proselytizing that everybody should at least be a Noahide, at least believe in the 7 mitzvahs of Noach. Interestingly enough, one of the famous Jewish outreach organizations in the world is Esha Torah, sure many of you are familiar with it. If you were ever facing the Western Wall and you turn around, you can see their world headquarters right in the back of the Kotel Plaza. Their founder, Rav Noach Weinberg, Zecher Tzaddik V'Kodesh Livracha, of tremendous blessed memory, the righteous remembered for a blessing. One of his projects that he was not able to take to fruition is he was building a center next to Aish Torah for the non-Jews, because he always had non-Jews come into Aish Torah, but he wanted to have the center to teach them that, you don't have to become Jewish, but you should at least consider the Noahide code as your way of life. So the Rambam says that why did Christianity and Judaism have so much success? Why did Christianity and Islam have so much success in the world? Because we as Jews weren't proselytizing well enough. In other words, we were not doing a good job of bringing the concept of monotheism to the world. Before Christianity comes to the world, there was basically Jews, Zoroastrians, which was kind of like a hybrid of polytheism and monotheism, and then everyone's polytheist. They were monotheists. Christianity brings monotheism to a third of the world. It brings a lot of the pagans over to a somewhat, again, it's an imperfect monotheism, but it's a somewhat monotheistic belief system. And then 700 years later, or 600 years later, Islam does the same thing for the other third of the world, for another third of the world. So now we're looking at a world whereas we have only a very, 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 very small group of monotheists. We have 1 billion Christians, 1 billion Muslims. We have, 2/3 of the world who already believe in the concept of monotheism, already believe in the concept, at least of some level, of one God. Again, some philosophical mistakes they made, as Rambam clearly addressed, but they believe in the concept of one God. Says Rambam, that's why they had their success. We as Jews weren't getting the job done to bring the concept of monotheism to the world, so we needed a Christian offshoot and a Muslim offshoot to bring it to the nations of the world so that the whole world would be prepared essentially for the concept of Mashiach. Right? Ketzad asked the Rambam, why was this important? Kavar nismai olam kula b'divrei Mashiach v'divrei Torah v'divrei mitzvos u'pshuta devarim elu boim rechokim v'amim rabim arlai lev. That before you have these concepts brought to the world was very far from the concept of monotheism and Messiah and commandments and Torah. And while Christianity and Muslim has not brought it to the world in a perfect way, it's brought it at least in an imperfect way to get the world at least ready for the concept of Mashiach, the concept of Messiah, so that when it is actualized, the world will be ready for the concept of Messiah, and it'll be prepared. Again, you can see probably where these words were censored by the Christian censors, but that, quite simply, is our definition of Mashiach. Again, it's got to be a king. It's got to be a king both physically and spiritually, and he's got to fight the wars of Hashem. That's the candidate. And then the one who will successfully be Mashiach is the one who conquers Israel with complete, unquestioned sovereignty, and he will rebuild the temple in its place, and he will bring back the exiles of Israel. That's the concept of Messiah from Jewish sources, plain and simple. Anyone who tries to tout another concept of Messiah is not a Jewish concept. That is the Jewish concept of Messiah. And as Maimonides speaks out clearly, what we've said here is fundamentals. It's one of the top 13 fundamental principles of Jewish faith, in that we believe that this situation will happen. Now, how's it going to happen? Haven't the foggiest, right? If I could figure that out, I get a much better paying job. But one thing we know, it will happen. I just want to say just another interesting thing is he says that any candidate who's come up and has not been successful it was basically a test for us. Now, we've seen, that even within the Jewish world today, there are certain Jewish messianic movements. Now, I'm not talking about Messianic Judaism. That's just Christian missionaries putting on a facade of Judaism to try and convert us to Christianity. That's not what I'm talking about. But there are Jewish groups today who are within the fold of Judaism who claim that their leader is Mashiach. Now, just simple words of the Rambam, when that leader was still alive, he didn't even make it off of first base, so to speak, right? The Rambam says, who's the candidate? King, right? The Davidic monarchy wasn't reinstituted, right? King, king, and again, in the ways of the Torah and find the worlds of Hashem, again, he was a holy rabbi. But he wasn't a king, so if you want a king, can't even be a candidate. But even beyond that, to definitely be, you got to do all those other things, which, we're still here in exile, and there's no temple, and the sovereignty of the Jews in Israel is definitely in question. That didn't happen. So, and then the Rambam said 2 or 3 or 4 times, if there's no second coming, you don't get one, you don't get more at bats. You have one at bat in your life to make it all happen if you're even a potential. So it's important. It's important to when we're addressed even with that philosophy, even though that's within the Jewish fold, to just quote this Rambam. This Rambam says it pretty clearly, plain as day, that there's no dead Messiah club, but there's no second chances, no second coming, no coming back from the dead, and anything that even looks like that is there just to essentially be a test for us, and that should not be where our belief system goes. Okay, let's we're almost at our time here, but I did start a few minutes late, so I definitely want to open up to questions. I see that in the chat box, by the way, everyone is muted, so you can either raise your hand here in Zoom, or you can put a question in the chat box, whatever you want. I do want to address, at least at some level, Chana's question. That's Chana Bayra, I believe. Chana asked, what about Mashiach ben Yosef? That there is a concept in Jewish belief of Mashiach ben Yosef. Now, what does that mean? That essentially it's a whole other class and a whole other discussion to get into the depths of it. But basically, the Jewish people was originally supposed to be a partnership. It was supposed to be a partnership of Jacob and Esau, Yaakov and Esau. Esau did not take the task, and it became the job of Jacob to be not only Jacob, but to be Esau as well, right? He had to do the job he was supposed to get and the job that Esau was supposed to get. So we understand that throughout history that there's the house of Judah, which went through Leah through one wife, and that's one approach. And then there's the house of Rachel, which is the other approach. And that's represented as Yosef. So those are 2 different approaches to perfecting the world. So we saw that the descendants of Rachel, their job is always to do what's called, and King David talks about this in the Psalms, to do what's called sur me'ra, to remove all the evil from the world. And then the job of the descendants of David, of Judah, of Leah, is the aseh tov, is to put everything in place after the evil is removed. And we see that's played out throughout history. There's always someone from the descendants of Rachel, the descendants of Joseph, from the house of Joseph, who's there to remove the, to pave the way, so to speak. Examples that we've seen are that we see that Joseph went down to Egypt before the Jews to prepare the way for the Jews. We see that when it came time to build the monarchy, the King Saul, who was from, again, Rachel, from Benjamin, was the first king. We see that when the way is paved for the second temple, who paves the way? It's Mordechai and Esther, again from Rachel, from Benjamin. And then who'll be the one who'll pave the way for the final Messiah will be this concept of Mashiach ben Yosef. Someone else is a descendant from Rachel. And that'll pave the way each time for the descendant of David to come into place. After Saul, it was David himself. After Esther and Mordechai, it was Zerubbabel. And then after, hopefully, Mashiach ben Yosef, it'll be Mashiach ben David. Okay, that's really class unto itself, but that's at least giving the question some attention here. Okay, other questions, comments, concerns? I see here, let me unmute Joanne here.
So I kind of have 2 questions that are very different. So you were talking about Maimonides being censored. Was that during his lifetime when it was just his writings? Or is this after the printing press was developed after his death?
Okay. Do you want to get the first question first?
My other question. These are 2 very, very separate ones. So one of the things you were saying is that Moshiach wouldn't be. Oh my God! Now I can't even think of the word.
All right, so let's get I'll get the first one, and then we can start.
Because I have quarantine brain.
Yeah, me too. I have quarantine beard. Right. So the first question is, when was Maimonides censored? So the answer is yes. Yes, he was censored both times, actually. Interesting thing about Maimonides is Maimonides was not accepted, as many great Jewish leaders, by the way, Maimonides was not accepted. I don't want to say not accepted, but his writings were controversial in his time for a number of reasons. But not for the section now necessarily that we're reading, because the Christians didn't really know about it per se. But within the Jewish camp, his writings were controversial. One of the reasons they were controversial is because really Maimonides was sort of this, I don't want to use the word arrogant because it's not the right word, but the strong pen that Maimonides wrote with over here that we quote about how he spoke about Christianity and Islam and people who think Messiah could come from the dead or all these things, the very critical pen he uses a lot. And when you write with a pen like that, that's not always a way to win friends and influence people. And one of the ways it does is really right at the beginning of his book, because in the introduction to this encyclopedic magnum opus, the Mishnah Torah, he writes that now that this is complete, now that my work is complete, to be a Jew, all you need now is a Chumash and my work. You don't need the Talmud anymore. You don't need all the commentaries anymore. I've got that covered for you. It's all here in my encyclopedia. And you can see how that was a controversial statement in this time, and that's sort of how he dealt with his book. Now, the Almighty, with his divine sense of humor, made it that there is no work in the history of the Jewish people that has spawned off more commentaries than the Rambam's work. But he said, "There's the book to end all books." Yet it spawned off thousands of commentaries. But so he wrote with a strong pen, a confident pen. And a lot of the writings and the attitudes and the position. Also, one of the things in this Mishnah Torah is he brings no sources. Now later, one of the main commentators, the Kesef Mishnah, put the sources back in. So we have the sources, but he didn't write it with sources. So again, a lot of things that were controversial at the time in the Jewish community, and there were so it was controversial and even burnt by certain elements of the Jewish community. So it was censored to a certain extent by the Jewish, not the whole Jewish community, but by elements of the Jewish community in his time. But then later, with the printing press, where the Christians were reading it and paying attention to it, then it was censored directly. In order to print it, these sections had to be taken out. So that's where the history of the censorship of Maimonides. So did you remember the second question, or should we? What?
I did. Yeah. So my other question is, and maybe I was hearing you wrong, that the Messiah wouldn't be performing miracles. But what I remember learning at some point was that when the Messiah would come, then all Jews kind of living in, like, even people who are dead would kind of roll in their graves to Israel. So isn't that kind of a miracle? Or
Good
is
question.
that...
Excellent question. So what Julian's referencing is that, by the way, we talked about belief of Messiah. The Maimonides list is principle number 12. What's principle number 13? Principle number 13 is the belief in the resurrection of the dead. So that's what Julian's getting to. So again, very fundamental Jewish belief, and so much so, by the way, that I've been saying a lot lately that one of the fringe benefits of the quarantine has been that I've had a lot more opportunity to focus on my prayers and really pay more attention. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we pray, we don't pay attention to the words we say because it becomes rote. But for anyone who's ever gone to synagogue and ever opened a Jewish prayer book and ever said the Amidah and said the second paragraph of the Amidah, you're praying for the resurrection of the dead. That's what the whole second paragraph of the Amidah is. And that whole sing-song part, Mechakel chayim bechesed, he sustains life with kindness, Mechaye meisim berachamim rabim, and he will resurrect the dead with great mercy. Right? So and he will sustain the faith of those asleep in the dirt. Who's like you, God of strength? Melech Menis, you're the God who makes people die. Umechaya, and you will bring them back to life. Umatzmiach Yeshua, and you'll bring about your redemption. So the whole idea of the resurrection of the dead is a very, 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 very fundamental Jewish belief. It's Maimonides' 13th principle Jewish belief. It's that whole second paragraph of our Amidah. That's what we're talking about, the resurrection of the dead. Very fundamental. The answer to your question, though, is that's something that happens after the Messianic era. That's a future step, and that's what the Rambam talks about a little bit further on over here. But even sources long before the Rambam talked about that. The whole point of Messiah is to reinstitute the Davidic monarchy and essentially bring the world to its fruition, bring the world to where it needs to be physically, spiritually. Once that happens, the world goes back to a Garden of Eden-like existence. You ever notice that one of the colloquial names for the afterlife in Judaism is Gan Eden? We refer to it as the Garden of Eden. Why do we refer to the afterlife as Garden of Eden? That's because when Adam and Chava, when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, the whole concept of the Garden of Eden was a synthesis of the physical and spiritual world into one. What that means exactly, we don't know, because we never lived there. But when they're kicked out, that synthesis was broken, and the spiritual and the physical world became two different entities. Now, when a soul leaves their body, when a person dies, that's what we call death, the soul has to go to a waiting place. So it goes to that spiritual Garden of Eden. That's where it goes to. We have different names for it. We call it heaven, Shemayim, we call it Olam Haba, the world to come, we call it the Garden of Eden. But all those names we also use to talk about the post-Messianic era. Because after the Messiah brings this world, no miracles, everything normal, just with kingship and ruling and doing things in the right way, he brings the world to where it needs to be spiritually and physically. Then God says, okay, now it's time to bring the Garden of Eden back to where it's supposed to be. The resynthesis of the physical and the spiritual. Now, for that to be in terms that we understand it, that means the resurrection of the dead. But it doesn't mean zombies walking around on the street, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a resynthesis of the physical world and the spiritual world, so that for our loved ones for now, their souls go on to the spiritual world, their bodies have decomposed in the ground, well, that's all going to be resynthesized into one spiritual, physical synthesis that we call the Garden of Eden. So that's after the Messiah. That's the Messiah brings the world to that point, and then that happens. And at that point, the physical and the spiritual are one. At that point, the world's reached its perfection, and that's the goal after Messiah.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up tonight? Okay, well, thank you all so much for participating. By the way, feel free to reach out to me anytime. We're going to post this video if you want to share it with anybody. We're going to post it on Facebook and YouTube. But please let me know. Feel free to email me, to Facebook me, text me, whatever. If you have any more questions, it has been an absolute pleasure tonight. And I hope that all of you. Oh wait, I'm sorry. One more question. I'm sorry, Janice. Let's get your question before we wrap it up.
This is off. Yeah, this is off the topic. But why do you not wear payout?
Who said I don't wear payout?
Oh, you do?
I just tuck them behind my ears.
Oh, okay.
They're there. Don't worry. They're there. I keep them hidden. I keep them undercover. So
okay.
Yeah, the Hasidic community is the one that wears them out in front, but others wear them, just leave their hair a little longer there and brush it back. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, and we'll look forward to talking to you again next week with another great Zoom class until the world opens back up again. Everyone have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.